on to the next room. Yeah. Welcome to the next row. From the field on my way to the next row. Welcome to the next row.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. This guy he has worked across music, distribution, and film and TV. Brett Dismuke. Brett, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on with you?
How you feeling, man? Thanks for coming on. We know you're a busy man, but for you taking time to come talk to us, it means a lot. Appreciate
Uh,
it.
Listen, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk some shop with you.
No, I appreciate it. And Brad, I gotta start off by asking this question because you're a man of so many things, and with your background, being in music distribution, film, and TV, how has that experience helped shape the way you lead All Black and WeTV?
Man, listen, my time in the music industry so I started off in the music industry while I was in college, and and I was able to learn up under some great individuals on that side. But even though I was a recent college graduate, I feel like music industry was a whole nother college of its own, preparing me for my future in film and television, because in the music industry, working under people like Steve Cook and Michael Bivins and Kevin Lyles and Leora Cohen and Al Jones and Don Carnegie, and I could go on and on about, all of the people that, really helped to develop me as an executive, and not lose sight of what's really important in this business, right? And at the end of the day, it comes down to the content and the artist, right? And so on the film and TV side, that's directors, actors, producers, writers, and then on the music side, the music artist, the recording artist, right? And so we don't have a business without them. And so keeping that first and foremost, I think is or was an important lesson that helped to carry over. But the other thing is, remembering that the content that we are supporting, that we are distributing, that we are creating, that we are releasing, this is not meant to take anything personally. And this is not about, what are my individual likes or dislikes. This is about the audience that we're serving. And if we know who the audience is, then, we have to, um, stay true to that and put our own egos to the side and get out the way. You know what I mean? And so, so that's really the biggest lesson that I was able to take away from the music business and now apply it to, I've been in film and TV now for 23 years. So I started off in the music business, did 10 years there, and then I transitioned to film and TV through the use of soundtracks and things like that. And so I've now been in film and TV for twice the amount of time that I was in the music business, but the foundational teachings are all the same.
So there are a lot of similarities between all the different groups.
Absolutely. I mean, how you artists develop, how you market, the way you use publicity, the way you use sales tactics, identifying your target audience, all of those things are absolutely the same. So they go hand in hand.
Okay. So it's just cruising. And so now you're in All Black. What makes a project black?
You know, yeah. Um, when we decided, because the name of our company used to be Urban Movie Channel, and we rebranded to All Black in January of 2021. And the vision behind the name or the brand All Black was to really highlight content from the Black perspective, right? So, that is all inclusive with, Black writing, Black producing, black directing, black talent in front of the camera. However, it is not exclusive to those things, right? So if a young woman or a young man grew up in a multiracial mixed neighborhood and tells a story from that black person's perspective in that multiracial neighborhood, as far as we're concerned, that's still a black story, even though a number of the people that may be on camera or in front of the camera, I should say, are not black, right? So, there are a lot of different ways you can shape the black perspective. And really, like I said, that was our mission, just to make sure that there was an outlet that would allow for stories of the black perspective to be told.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great stories out here. How do you decide which stories belong on All Black or We TV?
Well, is a very diplomatic process. When it comes to series and films that are being submitted to All Black in particular, the entire team, we vote on everything. A long time ago, I was watching the Temptations movie,
Mhm.
and there was something in the movie where Smokey Robinson would come out of the studio and he would ask the team, raise your hand if it's a hit, and people would vote, and if enough people's hands didn't go up, he would go back in the studio and start reworking the song, right? And so we kind of apply that same mentality here at All Black. If 75% of the team is not feeling the project, we won't greenlight it. So in that instance, um, it is we are using our existing staff as a focus group, in addition to them, doing their normal day-to-day jobs.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
No, no, I get you. Do you guys come collectively? Like, are you guys sitting there? Like, wait, maybe you watch the film, maybe you watch the content, and then someone
Yeah.
else watch the content. You all come together. Are you guys sitting in the boardroom? What's happening?
Well, so when it comes to acquisitions, so when finished films are sent over to us, then it's a much smaller group that, we watch the films on our own, and then we come together in our weekly meeting, and we make our or give our assessments, and then we vote that way. But when it comes to the original series or the original films, we gather all of the pitch materials and we let the whole team, study them all. And then we get together in a conference room, and we spend all day in there. And it's kind of like a war room type of process where everybody can express themselves with no judgment, and express the pros and the cons of, the project. And and then we vote on everything at the end of the day. And like I said, if it gets a 75% yes vote, then we'll green light.
And based on everything that you're greenlight, is there ever a moment where someone comes in and they don't, maybe like two or three people don't agree with everyone on certain things? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All the time. Like, we definitely don't agree on everything, but, I will say over the last 5 years, All Black, every year we have grown triple digit percentages in our subscriber base. So what that essentially means is, the methods that we're using are working. Right. And so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I will tell you, um, we absolutely do not all agree when it comes to voting on content. There have been some shows and some movies. There have been some shows and some movies that um, I personally voted no on, but 75% of the team voted yes. And so we move forward on those, and vice versa, right? And so but that's the beauty about the process, is everyone does have the space to express themselves and to comment and weigh in on the content that we're doing. And
Mhm.
that way everyone feels a piece of ownership when it comes to our content, right? It's not just here, go take these shows and these films that these two people greenlit and now y'all got to work them. Everybody feels a sense of ownership, when they're out there marketing or publicizing or creating the artwork or doing the social media, you know what I mean? That's how we've kind of, established a family setting.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And now, at this stage, with companies like BET being networks like BET being dissolved, what do you see the future of Black streaming platforms?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. The question is BET being dissolved, right?
Mhm.
And the reason why I say that's a question is because when you look at streaming services across the board, they are consolidating in 60 different options where you can subscribe to. When it's all said and done, we're probably going to have 15 to 20, right? And so again, what Paramount is doing with BT Plus is no different what Disney Plus is doing with Hulu and so on and so forth. Now, with that said and out of the way, there is definitely a question mark about where are the Black destinations going to be. Because as we go through this transition period, companies buying out other companies or consolidating or eliminating business units, we don't know what the landscape of Black streaming services is going to look like, let's say 6 months from now. But
Mhm.
wherever we land, it's going to look very different than it did, 18 months ago. And here's the thing, whether it's all Black, whether it's BT Plus, whether it's Zeus, whether it's Monza, whether TV1 gets in the game, whether Bounty gets in the game, OWN, so on and so forth, there will be some outlets that are focusing on Black content. But, you know, as this reorganization of Hollywood in general is taking place, we have to see where the chips are going to fall to see which companies are going to focus on that particular type of content.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So do you think, Black content will continue to evolve over the next 5, 10 years?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what I've experienced in my, 30 plus years of doing this, and again, whether it's on the music side or the film and TV side, every few years, there are companies that get out of the Black entertainment business.
Mm.
But every time a couple of companies get out of the Black entertainment business, a couple of other companies get in that business or get back in that business, right? And so, I think, it's ebbs and flows to the industry. And, at different points in the game, some companies put more emphasis on some areas, more emphasis than other areas, right? And, so I cannot foresee a future where there are no companies that place value on Black content.
Mhm.
There's too much money to be generated and circulated. We've seen the effects of the Black consumer, over the last, 50 years. So yeah. So to answer your question directly,
Mhm.
yes, I do see it continuing to grow. And who's doing it or who's participating may change, but somebody's going.
Yeah, no, I can feel
Yeah.
that. But it has to keep going on with,
Yeah.
with how it started and to where it's at now, you know what I mean? It's just continued to evolve, and I love that. How do you take culturally specific content and make it universally appealing?
Ooh. Well, I feel like, when something is authentic, people gravitate to it, right? And so, that's like saying, if you have a DJ scratching, a break beat and somebody starts rhyming, right? When that first started happening, there were some people that were like, oh, only the people in those neighborhoods where they do that, they're the only ones that's going to pay attention to that. But as we've seen, hip hop explode, over the last 30 years, if something feels good to a group of people, other people want to experience that, right? And so I don't care if it's music, if it's food, you know what I mean? If it's television culture. So, if authentic stories are being told, I think the audience naturally expands. And that's good, bad, or indifferent, right? So, there are some things that some content that is made that people feel like is too authentic, and they're like, hey, we shouldn't be telling all our dirty secrets, right? But you can't have it both ways. So either you want other people to consume and purchase and share and enjoy your content, or you don't, and so you gotta take the good with the bad.
You got me laughing when you said they don't want to give up everything. They don't want people to know.
Man, listen, it's certain things that happen in our families that may not necessarily be flattering, when you say it outside loud in front of somebody else, but the truth is the truth,
No, no, I get it. 'Cause culture
yeah,
is, man, if you look at it, whether you believe it or not, but culture is the difference between this person and that person. There's a drastic difference. You know what I
yeah,
mean? When it comes to
yeah,
culture,
yeah,
it's just something like you said, and I feel what you're saying because there's a lot of things the way maybe it's how we parenting back in the day. You know what I mean?
yep,
Versus they parent, their parenting is. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's different things you want to kind of keep home because especially nowadays we get accused for everything.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a clip circulating online somewhere where Denzel is explaining the difference between culture and race difference, right? And he summed it up, greatly when he said it, because it's just about experience. There are certain things that we can say or do or make certain sounds that mean something. To us, that it might not mean anything to somebody else, right? And that's across the board, right? That's every culture has that, and so yeah, but I'm not a gatekeeper, so I don't believe in only telling certain types of stories. I feel
Mm.
like we should tell it all, and celebrate the culture and everything that comes along with it.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. When it comes to the business side of this industry, a lot of people don't understand the business side of entertainment. What's
Yeah.
one thing you wish people would know, which you wish people knew before they pitched?
Well, I will say this. Number one, you got to know your audience. When you are pitching content to a network, a studio, or a streaming service, your content does not fit all of those studios or networks or streaming services the same way. And so, when people pitch said content and they tell you, I have the perfect show for you, or I have the perfect film for you, but
Mhm.
in your pitch, based on the genre or the feel of the series or film that you're pitching, it becomes very evident if you don't even watch the network that you're pitching, right? So for instance, at All Black, we specialize in, the Black perspective, right? So if you pitch us a show that is about a white teenage suburbanite in Iowa making her way through high school, but then you tell me in the intro email, I got the perfect show for you. Come on now. So you know what I mean? But this happens all the time. This happens all the time. And it's like what would make you think we want a comedic western set in New Mexico with zero black people, right? And it's like, but
Oh, that's
but
hilarious. Yeah.
But what I think happens is people have these ideas and they're just ready to pitch
Mhm.
any and everybody. But that can backfire on you because you need to do your homework so that you know who you're talking to.
Mhm.
At least the network or the streaming service or the studio that they work for and the other projects that they've put out so that y'all can have, a legitimate conversation about where this content fits into their slate or their catalog or whatever it is. So doing your homework on who you're pitching to is number one. And then I would also throw in, believe it or not, it's a lot of people out here in this industry that call themselves being their own lawyers because they're trying to save some money. And if I've seen it once, I've seen it 1,000 times. Pay the money to have, a qualified lawyer review your contracts and your terms because, you're reading the stuff yourself or you're having, your cousin look at it for you who you just think is a smart individual and you sign these contracts to get the money. And then when you have problems with delivery, or you have problems with your music clearances, or you have problems, with your name and likeness restrictions, or whatever it is, and you haven't read any of the true details of the contract, you're in trouble. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And you have no one to fault but yourself. And so, yeah, so that would be the second thing. Like, don't just because you stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night does not make you a lawyer. So, pay for some official legal assistance.
That's funny, man. But look, speaking of, you got me thinking now, Ryan Coogler, speaking of
Yes.
Black creators, how you feel about the big win Sinners just had?
Man, it was beautiful for the culture. Um and let me say this. Let me say this. Think, we felt the movement that Sinners was and that it created, right? And you know, as I have looked through all of, a lot of the comments online or things like that, there are some people that are never satisfied, right? And so they're like, okay, well, it won this award and this award, but it didn't win this award. It should have won that award. Listen, it took home a lot of statues, right? Ryan Coogler partnering with Michael B. Jordan, they have done it again because that partnership from Fruitvale Station to Creed to, Black Panther to, now Sinners, they keep winning, right? And I saw a lot of Black people get acknowledged because of Sinners being in the forefront, right? But I'm gonna go ahead and say it. What is it? What's the other film? Another Battle. Uh, the Tiana Taylor film.
Mhm.
What is it? Another Battle. Another Battle.
I don't think I saw that one.
That's the one that actually won Best Film,
Okay.
right? But so it's Tiana Taylor, Regina King, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn.
Okay.
And here's the thing, and whether you like the subject matter or not, there were a lot of Black people that were upset that, you know, that film won certain categories over another. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, listen, and not to quote Issa Rae, but I'm gonna quote Issa Rae. I'm rooting for all the Black people. So if it's
Mhm.
Tiana Taylor, if it's Regina Hall, if it's Michael B. Jordan, like, listen, we were being celebrated in more than one film. You know what I mean? And I don't take that lightly. And so, I saw, people that look like me win a lot of different awards, and it's not just the Oscars, it's all of the shows, the whole festival, I mean, not festival, the whole award season, those films were being acknowledged and our people were being acknowledged. And so if The Shape of Water, and I've vocalized a few things about how crazy I think that film is. If that film could win Best Picture and nobody complained about the water monster being broke out the museum and watching movies after he just had sex with the cleaning lady, but whatever. But if that can win and y'all don't complain about that, then stop trying to pick apart the projects that feature the black people as well. So anyway, but I just wanted to say that. But going back to the original question, I definitely feel like the centers movement is something that we will remember, and, even though there was some light criticism on
Mhm.
Michael B. Jordan's acceptance speech, I thought he hit the nail on the head. And, because when it comes to inspiration, you can't tell somebody else what inspired them. You know what I mean? And if he was inspired by Lou Gossett Jr. and Will Smith and Jamie Foxx and Halle Berry and Denzel Washington, like let that man have his moment. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And because when other people, are accepting their awards and and naming all the people that have inspired or influenced them, nobody's saying, oh, why did they say that person and that person? Like, stop it. Stop it. Just look,
Mhm.
enjoy the movie. And I'm gonna tell you this. I'm more intrigued by an interview I saw with Ryan Coogler where he said he originally wrote Sinners as a prequel to Blade and
Oh,
pitched it
wow.
to Marvel, and they passed.
Hmm.
And so he decided to rework the script a little bit and pitch it as an individual concept. And now look at it. You know what I mean? Like if that was the prequel to Blade, I mean, come on, like that'd have been through the roof. But anyway, I digress on that. So I'm very proud of everything that whole team was able to accomplish with Sinners.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Shout out to the crew.
Yes.
No budget, no restrictions. You can green light any dream project. What would it be?
Cool. No budget, no restrictions. Man. All right. No budget, no restrictions. Wait, do remakes count? No. Okay. No. No. You know what? I'm not gonna do a remake. I'm not gonna do a remake. Okay. Okay. I would make a movie about internationally recognized super music group that goes on a world tour and 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 we see all the behind the scenes of what it's really like to be an international superstar, but something goes left on tour and they have to somehow make it back to the United States with no passport.
Make it back to the United States. Or no passport. So, I mean, so how do they get?
We gotta work it out. Like
Yeah,
like
work
this is like
at the Kings.
this is
Okay,
like a Jackson's World Tour meets the Warriors trying to get home meets, you know, uh, yeah, meets the Five Heartbeats. Let's go. Let's go.
you must have been thinking about this for a long time, man. You've been thinking about this.
No, I literally just thought about it right now. But this is something that I would watch though.
Oh,
I would
oh,
watch that. If I no budget, no restrictions, I'm making something that I want to see.
nice, nice. I get. Hey, come on, man. Look, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Came through. You gave me your answer.
Yes.
Okay, I'll accept it. I'll accept it. What advice do you have for me? I love the entertainment space, film writing, producing. What advice would you give me?
Man, you know what? I would say stay true to yourself and your vision, right? And because here's the thing, we are in the no business. And so when you come up with ideas and you pitch them to studios or streaming services or what have you, just because, eight people said no doesn't mean that your story is not good or your concept, isn't relatable. You know what I mean? And so this industry hands out a lot of different no's for a lot of different reasons, and
Mhm.
and we don't have the luxury as someone who has pitched a lot of content. In my time as well, we don't know what the circumstances are why that network passed or why that studio passed and so on and so forth. But it only takes one person to say yes, right? And a lot of times I think as creatives, we can get discouraged because other people did not see our vision. But when you think about it, that's why it's everybody's not gonna get it. You know what I mean? And so I would say, trying to navigate this space, um, and like I just talked about, like if you get 8 no's on something, right? Last time I checked, it's like 200 cable networks, right? So 8 no's doesn't even scratch the surface
Mhm.
of who you could potentially pitch. You know what I mean? And so, but I'm gonna tell you where that comes from with me. The glass is always half full for me. And so I'm an optimist, and I'm always going to find, the positive out of a situation. So if it's a no, if it's a this doesn't fit, if it's this is going to cost too much money, or what have you, all you're doing is creating an opportunity for me to go make magic with somebody else. You know what I mean? And so, now I will tell you, in this business, everybody's not an optimist, right? And so, I'm in meetings with people all the time, they think the sky is falling every day. And
Mhm.
I'm like, it hasn't fallen yet. Well, unless you watch Paradise, but that's a whole nother story. Do you watch Paradise?
Paradise
Uh,
now. I'm
uh,
Paradise now.
Sterling K. Brown show. Hey, it's really good. But the sky actually falls on Paradise. But outside of that, the sky hasn't fallen yet, right? So, that is my main takeaway, for someone like you know, venturing into a space that, quite frankly, some people don't want you in. They're like, "Oh, you play football. Why you coming over here doing this?" And you know what? Your answer is, "'Cause I can." You know what I mean? Like, and but that's the armor that I feel like people need to have on when they're trying to get into this business. Because if you don't have that armor, like it's just a bunch of people standing outside with knives and swords. All they want to do is sticky, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it could be discouraging, but if you can somehow look at the positive takeaways from all those situations and not get discouraged, then I feel like nothing can stop you.
No, that's real, man. I feel that because anytime you go from one sector to the next,
Yeah.
like it's like, okay, how am I going to be accepted? Like
Yep.
they see me doing this, but are they going to accept me doing this?
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
so that's always a challenge, and I totally understand that. Now, who do you think the best athlete turned actor is? I mean, you don't have to say me, even though I just won an Oscar at my church. It's all good. I still don't want to be in the midst of this, man. It's all good. Who do you think?
The best
Athlete
athlete
turned actor.
turned actor.
Yep.
I'm gonna go old school. I'm gonna go old school and say Bernie Casey.
Okay, I didn't expect
Yeah. I mean, I mean, because listen,
wow.
I mean,
Okay.
because and that's back in the Jim Brown era. I believe Fred Williamson played ball too, right?
Fred Williams, I think so.
I believe he did, but I just remember, man, like, and because the black exploitation era was a little bit before me, but I just remember Bernie Casey in films in the '80s, and I'm gonna get you sucker fan.
Okay, okay,
You know what I
okay,
mean?
okay.
So I'm gonna go old school with my answer today.
Okay, I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's my favorite film, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Right. I'm surprised you didn't say Jim Brown or Terry Crews, man.
So listen, I was thinking Jim Brown, but then when I thought about it, I said, but you know what? Jim Brown was standing right next to Bernie Casey. Bernie Casey was hilarious. I was like, so I gave it to Bernie. Yeah.
Nah, 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 I got that. I get it. I get it. You grew up in Chicago, right, with a police officer mom. Did that help shape the way you see stories or anything? How did that
Oh
did
man.
it impact you in any kind of way?
Yeah, you know what? So yeah, so growing up on the south side of Chicago, my mom became a police officer when I was in 5th grade. And, I would say it shaped me as a person as well as, how I view stories because I feel like I don't have a one-sided perspective, right? So before my mom joined the police department, like, we were on the southeast side and, we were in a, it wasn't the worst Chicago neighborhood, but it wasn't the best, right? And then, after she was a cop for a few years, we moved to Hyde Park, which was a much safer environment, right? And so I would say, growing up right outside Jeffrey Manor and dealing with the gangbangers and the drug dealers on a daily basis, and then, living amongst, the middle to upper middle class black folks and not and non black folks, but then also having a perception of the police before and after my mom joined,
Mm,
right? So before she joined, when you in the neighborhood, we like the police are not your friend, right?
mm,
But then my mom became one, and then her friends are now cops. And so I saw the human side of being a police officer, particularly black police officers, right? And so yeah, so I feel like, I do have a unique perspective, and quite frankly, in my family, what I have a lot of justice impacted relatives as well as relatives on the law enforcement side, right? So that's the full spectrum. And then everything in between, you know what I mean? And so I can relate to I can relate to the Cosby Show in a different world, just like I can, Good Times or Boys in the Hood.
mm,
You know what I mean? So, when I talk to some of my friends, I feel like a lot of people grew up in the neighborhood that they grew up in, and they know that one perspective. I have a few different perspectives, and I think that also helps when we are breaking down stories and scripts and and discussing the realism of certain situations, and or even the sensitivity of you know uh uh
mm,
how people view things that are being portrayed on our network, right? Whether it's a scripted project or whether it's unscripted, something like, Love After Lockup, you know what I mean?
mm,
Shows we have like Cold and Windy and Double Cross, it definitely gives different angles to some of these stories from me having this, what I would call a diverse background.
no, that's
Yeah.
powerful, man. That's powerful. I mean, you've done so much already, man. And, to me, it feels like you're just getting started. I know it probably feels the same way too. You probably feel the same, about yourself because it's never ending for people like us. And,
Yeah.
I appreciate you for coming on, sharing your story and, just, giving us a glimpse into your life and, what you're doing, where you
Yep.
are, what you're doing now and where you're planning to go. As we wind down, I know I got to get you out of here, Brett, because time is here. It
Yeah.
don't seem like we've been talking as much, but we've come a long way. I want to ask you this question, and then I'm
Mhm.
gonna rapid fire with you and get you out of here. What advice would you give yourself at 21?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Life is full of imperfect people, and the striving for perfection um can drive you or motivate you, but it's an impossible goal, right? And so, understanding that everyone present has made mistakes and will continue to make mistakes, I
Uh-huh.
think is a grounding that our young individuals, need to know. And I would just say, 21, at 21, I had just graduated college. The fairy tale that we're taught sometimes, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then you get a job, and then you get married, and you have kids. And listen, somebody wrote that script a long time ago, and that's not necessarily how it's gonna go, and nor should you feel like a failure if it doesn't go that way. You know what I mean? And you got to try things, and you got to see what you like and what fits, you as an individual, and I think that's really important, especially these days. And listen, me and my mom and my dad, we all graduated college. My son graduated college. However, I am now way more understanding, and if my son had told me, Dad, college is not for me, okay, I'm open to that, right? Like, I didn't have a choice,
Mhm.
but I would have been open to that because, okay, so tell me what you want to do, right? And so, I think if I was talking to my 21-year-old self, in addition to not being afraid to make mistakes, but also allowing yourself grace is very important.
That's amazing. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. You gave me chills with that one.
Okay. Good,
Look,
good,
I'm
good.
gonna get you. I know you got to get out of here. I had you long enough. Let me do this rapid fire with you real quick, Brad. All right.
Okay.
Any given Sunday, Friday Night Lights,
Any given Sunday,
coffee or energy drink,
coffee.
Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor.
Eddie Murphy.
Who will win the championship this coming year? Well, this year.
In which sport?
Bulls or Bears?
Bears.
Ah,
The
Chicago.
Iceman is coming.
Come on, man. If
Yes.
you could choose an actor for your best, if you could choose an actor for your best film, who would you choose out of these two? Will Smith or Denzel?
Denzel.
There we go. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah,
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 okay.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. Yeah. That
I,
was a tough one though, but yeah.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. I know you're a busy man, and we were able to catch you, so I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
All right,
indeed.
Brett.
All
All
right,
right.
for sure.
Welcome to the next row.